Boom, boom. Welcome to Real Liberty Media, RLMradio.xyz. I'm your host, Vinny. Vince Easley, Vincent Easley the second, with a ray in the middle, a ray of sunshine, I hope. So today we're talking about Cliven Bundy, American terrorist, or Patriot, a stickler in a strict land. Authorized biographer Michael L. Stickler comes to air with a ponder gander in what matters to review his book about the federal standoff in Bunkerville, Nevada. It's more than a tale of the tortoise and the hare, hide and hoof. It's a fight for the right and what lies on the land. The cattle rattle. I was there. The end. See ya. Thanks, Governor. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next week, Friday. Wait a minute. We got more to say. Hold on. So, in the Blogcaster link, I have a bunch more added stuff in here for you. There's a picture of Vinny Eastwood, or yeah, me, not the Vinny Eastwood down under or in New Zealand. But anyways, yeehaw, y'all. Ain't so. Don't fence me in, cause there's no Vince's fences. Rolling back to the hills. A week will find me back home after 16 months of traveling around the U.S. of A. Rounding out my over-the-road, I hope to prod you along, my weekly broadcast here at Real Liberty Media. Fridays at noon Central, that's Central Daylight Time right now, and 1 o'clock on the East Coast. And Mike Stickler will be joining me here at the top of the next hour, and as we roll along, I was born under a ponder gander wandering star. Sure enough, been rolling around this country, got a lot to tell, and been talking about the Bundy ranches. I was there, number 303 on the witness list for the Bundys. So spent time out there in 2014. This past year back in Vegas, was there for the trial. We'll come talk about that a little bit more. So peace, puff, puff, pass, peace ad infinitum. That's the tumbling tumbleweed of Poot and Patties. Now, if you don't know what a Poot is, Bundy supporters have garnered to handle Poots. And, well, there's some reasoning behind that. But I've redesignated the name to, and with some help from Brand Thornton and Captain Carl, to Patriots, overthrowing oppressive tyrants. Now, I've also considered another bit of acronym there, and that's people opposed to overbearing tyrants. And the patties. Who are the patties? Not the good kind of patty you might think. Not like a beef patty, a hamburger patty, a peppermint patty, and not even a patty pie on the ground. I'm teasing you guys. Some people call them trolls. We've got folks like Goblin Seaman. You love Goblin Seaman. There seems to be a lot of followers and chewing them up and spitting them out and poking a pun at Gavin Syme, who's he's fled the patty or the field or the pod, whatever open air prison you might like to think it is. He's gone down to Mexico. Viva. And so from Vinny the Pooh, Poet, Vinny the Poet, the poet and the Poot, sure. I'm a redneck hillbilly southern fried slice of country with a western swing and a dab of salsa from Tulsa. And we have a little bit of a redneck hillbilly southern fried slice of country love song, and that is with the Ponder Gander along with Elmer Fudd and Robin Williams, and he sings that Dwight in my car. That'll be included in the Blogcaster, sure enough. Let's scroll down some. No rulers, or the rules of anarchy. Enemy of the state. Welcome to the Dominican Republic. An archaeist from Arkansas, stating the resistance. Marking the misses. And not your old lady I'm talking about. That where the hit strikes and the misses. Near hits, near misses. Does that make any sense at all? Anyways, victory over oppression rings the Liberty Bell. They are listening till the end. Respect means no intrusion. Say it again. Respect means no intrusions. Focus. Oh, print. The end. Viva la feliz. Once ago, I had an illusion. You'll find that with Maria Alante and another YouTube link right there. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do, and it went away. Because I let it go away. Why did I let it go away? I don't know. I only know that it's gone now. Acts. Deceits and deceptions. Transparent means not seen. What's your deeds indeed? 13:10. Battlefield America. Thanks, Hal Anthony. Talks about this on Sundays. Pretty regular. Wow, I'm almost done. Is this the end? We're only 6 minutes in. Battlefield America. Commission of or by omission. So broadcasting the seed. The notice in the news beyond opinion. That is behind the woodshed right here at reallibertymedia.com, rlmradio.xyz. If you haven't found it, you're over on YouTube. This is broadcasting through there. Thank you, Grimner. And we'll come back to the podcast, the blogcast, and what we talk about and do, or say we do, or seem to do sometimes. But anyways, right here at Real Liberty Media. Come on over and listen. I'm here live on noon o'clock Central. That's a time and a location. Anyways, we've got some object lessons learned from behind the woodshed. Are we occupied or conquered? However you concur, concur against the cure or with cure. It's your choice. How do you ride the planet? We've got a ticket to ride, baby. And anyways, that little quote come out of part of it. It's your choice. How do you ride the planet? From a ski film called Ticket to Ride. Cal says, don't invent reality. Well, as I said, as the reader wrote, the reader read, the sayer said, the hearers dread. Disturbed inside, then stirred instead inside their head. Sought or lost, not even started, begins to the end. If you haven't figured out, this is the last broadcast on the road after 16 minutes. It's the end. The end begins again, though, and we'll keep rolling around back to it. So the end. Or overrun and come back occupied, not conquered. So who's driving this wagon? Bread and circuses. The suffrage of suffrage, the right to vote, jihad. You left, right, left, right, left. No, left's right and right's left. The end. Oh, wait. Is it really? Electors versus victors. That should be voters, but hey, king of the typo and the taco. Who's right? I'm right. You're wrong, right? You're right. Now we're right. Back to the left. Off again. The end ended. The end ended. We got some happy trails. There's the video in the broadcaster. It'll be there. Happy trails to you. Yes, the march moves merrily along. Happy trails to you. Don't fall off the wagon like a drunk telling his tale again and again and again. Again, the end. Lostlandia, the power of the horde, all boxed in board, stacked in a cord. Towering as a lord, attired and adored, existence demanded, hope handed, then remanded, death be afforded. Free up front, cost dear in the end. Wow, Alexis Affexis, my girl Alexis, can you hear me now? The tail wags the dog. It's what's been told you. Hogwash is gold. Ah, sticks and stones may break your bones, I've heard it said, but when ripped from your bed with two in the head, it's the words never heard that'll make you sure enough dead. The end. We got some cowboy tales along the way. For all the people are like grass, and their glory is like flowers in the field. The grass withers, and the flowers fail, or they fall. The beauty is like a flower in the field that fades away. 1 Peter 1:24. The end again. Yesterday's gone. We can't get it back. It's not dying I'm talking about. It's living. And the only healthy way to live is to like the little everyday things. Lonesome Dove, Augustus McCrae. Ponder gander along the way. Don't see it set your sights only on the end. Say it one more time. Ponder gander along the way. Don't set your sights only on the end. Warning, this just in. A ponder gander from the sheriff. That's Sky Reeve from the Twittersphere. Stuff that'll land you in prison. Save yourself and your money. I'll include that link there for the Sky Reeve, the sheriff, to that link. Talking about somebody selling some poo down the line, down the road down there. I'm going to tell you, I was out in Denver. I saw Bruce Doucette. He's effectively, undoubtedly going to be locked away for the rest of his life in prison for, what's mistakenly being titled a sovereign citizen stuff, which, of course, is an oxymoron. It was really too bad. I got to know Bruce just a little bit watching him and being able to come into part of his life there. Brand Thornton and I went to Denver earlier this year for that trial. We got there for the second week, which was last week, and it was the end, it seems, for Bruce Doucette and some of those others that were involved in this, filing liens on public officials. Yeah, I wish you guys would listen to Hal Anthony behind the woodshed. Tells you about this. You're reacting instead of reaction instead of proaction. And if you think ignoring the government is going to make it go away, or the actions of government, or where you're in the way, watch that beast that rolls along its way, right? Back and forth. It has habits. So be a resistance, but don't get rolled over and squashed away. But the cattle are prowling, the coyotes are howling, way out where the dog is roam, where spurs are jingling and the cowboy is singing his lonesome cattle call. He rides in the sun till the day's work is done, and he rounds up the cattle each fall, singing his lonesome cattle call. Get the video for that. That'll be Dwight Yoakam singing that one. And I take a moment and ponder and reflect Ryan Bundy back there in Bundy Ranch while I was out visiting. And I spent 11 days and then later 28 days camped out along the Virgin River. And our resident chatters, of course, will recall or regale along with me this tale. The rabble-rousing rambling. Let's try again. The rabble-rousing rambling and a ponder gander. That's a wander on the wander. I just found out here, last year that wander, as you wander along, it's not wandering in the head, or is it? But wander, how do you say that? I always say wander, same. But anyways, I digress. But hey, let's get ready to rumble. Yep, the Battle of Bunkerville, the battlefield in Bunkerville, that is. The cattle battle, Bundyville to Bunkerville. A rattle royale, and it's more than a tortoise and a hare. Let me say that one again. More than a tale of the tortoise and the hare, hide and hoof. It's a fight for the right and what lies on the land. We might touch on it a little in the next hour. Mike Stickler and myself, we're going to talk about his book, Cliven Bundy, American Terrorist or American Patriot. In this, we've got a series out. I say we, PBS, or Oregon Public Broadcasting does. Leah Sotilli, and it's called Bundyville. So I've listened through once, listened to the preview. I'm going to come back, and I might cut her a little bit of slack here. I guess I'm going to probably have to. But because there are some accidental statements, and I won't call them lies, but fantastic indeed. Yes, Cherry Roberts, and we have the status here of Leah Satelli. And in response, Dave Brisky at Skater Dude 76, he says her series is amazing. Thank you, Leah Satelli. Vincent, he says, I'd also love to see your response and where you disagree. Do I have a podcast or blog about the Oregon Standoff? Well, the Oregon Standoff, I guess, rolls into the what they've called the Bunkerville Standoff. And where was I? Scrolling to the end. It always seems to be more and more. We never get to the end, do we? Seems like I've missed something somehow along the way. Well, yes, I do. And as you saw there on the broadcast, over on the Twitter sphere, I'm on right now. So thank you, Dave. I am witness number 303 for the Bundy Ranch trial. I was there in 2014 and in Vegas last year for the trial that lasted into dismissal with prejudice here January the 8th. And again, I was there. But that was outside the courthouse and inside the federal courthouse in Las Vegas. I broadcast Fridays at noon Central, 12 p.m. CDT. It's not a disease, but some sort of disease, I suspect, for Liberty Media. RLM of radio.xyz. Thank you. Tiny Bubbles, Real Liberty Media. RLM_radio on Twitter. And the Barman, yes. Barman RLM. Find him as well. Did I really go through all that? You know how long it took me to put all that together? Golly. And of course, I didn't get it all together, but hey, I'm disconnected at chat. Let me try to change my doohickey right here. And I'll go from Vinny to Vinny IB. And as that tries to do what it does, I'll probably have to just end up refreshing the whole damn thing. But I will be going back over. I got a lot more response to tend to over on his Twitters from this last week. Some questions from Mike Stickler coming up. And as we just reload this baby, I'll tell you about Cliven Bundy, American terrorist. Oh, that's crossed through Patriot. And it is the shocking yet true story as told to the author with twists, turns, highs, lows, and intrigue, explores the common sense of the life of one man, his devoted family, and the fellow patriots whose response to government overreach parallels the lives of the founding fathers of this great experiment known as the United States of America. Yes, reload. Thank you. It's a story not yet finished in its telling. It's a story every family should read and declare in their own voice. This is Vinny's voice right here, doing that. It's a story you must decide for yourself. Is Cliven Bundy an American terrorist or an American patriot? Author Michael Stickler is an author, radio show host, ex-felon, and a highly sought-after motivational speaker. His best-selling book, A Journey to Generosity, is widely acclaimed throughout the Christian community. He is a publisher of Generous Living magazine and writes for the Christian Post, A Generous Life column, www.mikestickler.net. Okay, what's my nickname? I've got so many of the Vinnies, but we'll go with V&E. V&E. Here we go. We'll go ahead and get back over here in the chat room. This Windstream, this Internet of Things, is a broadcast across the world, worldwide. At the end of the line here, it drops. But thankfully this week I remembered to put my phone, this Skype call here, on data. So it's trying, I do think, says connecting. And it is 4:20 somewhere. Thank you. On the 18th of May. It's always 4:20 somewhere. And thank you to the Weed Fairy who visited me recently. About the book, Domestic Terrorist or American Patriot. Cliven Bundy. The federal government treats him as a domestic terrorist. The media characterizes him as a gun-toting militia wacko. The Bundy name is celebrated by ranchers and farmers throughout the West. But that same name has become a I can't say it. Can I? Yes, I can. I can't. There's the Ocelli tongue-tied award. Thank you very much. Chuck Ocelli, the Ocelli Effect, broadcast through over here to Real Liberty Media 5 nights a week, sometimes more than that. Well, to those, at least ensconced in Washington, those who work to arrest the oncoming wildfire, this thing is not connected for some reason, and I'm distracted. I'm going to try to reload one more time. It's my slow computer. It's retarded like me, and as is the internet connection, retarded. Some people say you ain't supposed to say that. Okay, so those who work to arrest the oncoming wildfire of honest examination of the long-held federal assertion of land ownership and management, irrespective of the citizens' constitutional rights and guarantees across the West's vast agricultural sector, one that feeds the world. Doesn't it, though? All right, hold still there. I'm going to poke this guy in the eye. I'm going to try to get back into the chat again. Start. Let's see if it connects. With this book, Cliven Bundy tells his story for the first time to author Mike Stickler while behind the razor wire fences of federal lockup. Stickler spent over 40 days documenting Bundy's side of the conflict that led over 200 federal agents in full tactical gear, armed for civil war, to seize, sell, and destroy his cattle. Acting well beyond their judicial warrant, the standoff made international news. I was there, creating the rally cry, "No, hell no," that brought thousands of Americans from across the country to the Bundy Ranch in 2014, in April of 2014. Additionally, Cliven gives his personal account of life lost and the continued cost that the Bundy 19 endure as they continue to sacrifice their livelihoods and freedom. The author describes the intense hardship of the Bundy 19, 18 others charged with federal crimes along with Cliven, their experience from the oppression and danger that continues in the government's private contract prison in which they are held. From here, Cliven shares his personal inner fears and hopes for the future. It's a burden that weighs heavily upon Cliven's heart. I sit down with Cliven, and they had a bowl of beans and Bundy beef. His wife Fix, Carol Bundy. Now let me tell you what I know about the Bundys, at least in part. I went out in 2014 when I heard Pete Santilli give out the cry that America was under attack. I spent some time out there, back and forth to Vegas. I was in Vegas at the time when it happened, and Bunkerville ain't far from me there. That is, I lived in Wappa Valley. I went to school in Overton in 8th grade. We played football against Mesquite, which is just right up the road from Riverside, which Bunkerville is in between Mesquite and Riverside. And I was the local sheriff, self-appointed as it be, and I was there. So I did make it over here to the chat, and how to do. There's Flashes. He was a previous host with myself here. He still is, but on the Dork Table, 11 o'clock Central Time here on Rural Liberty Media, 12 noon Central. See, noon Central is a time and location, is it not? It is our dear Hans listening He said he was a while ago. At least he was back and wanted us to notify the press. I hear you. I can hear you now, indeed. And they heard me. They have heard me. Forrest Gump famous I am, sure enough. I like to laugh at myself. You weren't born. You were hatched. Indeed. I have Mike Stickler's book here, read, and we're not gonna share it to the end. But when Mike comes on here in a few, we'll talk about that book. Some highlighted notes. Cliven Bundy has the book there. I seen it at his house when I visited him. Another day, I went back and we rode around. He and I, or actually Andrew Cullen, photographer, doing some pictures and shoots and shots for. And I wouldn't mind doing some shots with the guy. He's pretty cool. He spent 5 years in Tibet. Check him out, Andrew Cullen, and great photographer. I thought I enjoyed the ride. Everybody assumes since I'm a poot, I'm just all whatever goes with the Patriot movement. I don't call myself a patriot or constitutionalist, an anarchist, and when go back up there to the Dominican Republic. drink, swallow it, and I just got kicked out of dropped from the chat again and again. It seems to be the end every time. So somebody thinks Judge Dredd, that's Hansel. He thinks you're from Roswell. Well, you're welcome to relocate to the Dominican Republic, except you'll have to. Oops. You'll have to change the name as I pick up the mic. I wasn't ready to drop the mic. I will be at the end. So I'm waiting for it to deconnect or reconnect, deconstructed. But hey, that's part of the show. Showing or listening or hearing. Ain't much to see. Move along. I think here in a minute, I'll ramble around. Shoot, error connecting. Why don't you come on and talk with me, Grimner?
What's up, Vinny?
Hey, bud. So, you asked me, when am I going to be done with this Bundy business, right?
Yeah.
Well, shoot, I ain't told half of it. I still got a lot to go. I've got all these notes that I've taken. I've got tons and tons of video that have not seen the light of air. So a lot more to talk of. The light of air. Light air, yeah. It's air light. It's less filling and more refreshing. I think we're going to try to get back in here to chat. I want to say hi to everybody over there and see some questions. And I want to go back over to the Twitters. And so here, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I kind of shot myself in the foot and all the butt hurt poops. And the joke was said I was the one with the big old butt hurt. We can talk about that. But anyways, before I do, as we're connecting here, Grimner,
do you need Barman to get you some preparation H or something?
Yes,
for all that
please.
Butt hurt?
Wait, here I am. Okay, fetch. Come on. Why don't you show the vids on the show, Vinny, and add some excitement? Well, I'm so much more than a tech target. Oop, hurts. Oops, I'm Putin. Oh, Mom. They're too late. Barman, watch this. Give me some preparation H for butt hurt poops. Do it, Grim. Do it.
Oh, man.
Are you typing yet? Because I'm watching the screen. You didn't do it.
No, I'm not typing nothing. I thought you were typing.
Oh, well, I'll do it myself. Never mind.
Well, you're the one who needs it. My butt's fine.
Well, what do I call that? Some poop, butt hurt,
Yeah.
screen, eye top,
You know,
so
we
fast.
got a group of folk over there on the YouTube live. So
Oh, really?
say howdy to I've been here.
I've been here. Hello.
Say howdy
I was
to
there.
IB Don C.
Donnie, baby, what's up?
And say hey to Buster.
Buster. Hey, Buster. Hey, Buster.
It's
Looking
not
for
Buster
trouble?
Keaton.
Chloe, I see
Could
you
be
sticking
Buster
your tongue
Hyman.
out.
I'm not sure.
Buster Heine. Hey, this is a butt hurt
Not Buster
edition.
Heine, Buster
This, this,
Hyman.
oh, Buster Hyman. Hey, so yeah, I think I don't know if I responded to some of those guys' questions from some time back, but yeah, MD louder. Let's just get a little louder with MD. Some people say she's gobbling semen on the Twitter. Now I'm gonna punch these patties. Ow! I hit my elbow. Ooh, that wasn't funny. Oh, no elbow room. What is NSFW
Not
anyways?
safe for
Oh,
work is the general accepted.
not safe for work. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'm knocking walls down with my elbow. MD Louder gets a little louder. Goblin semen on Twitter. So punching the patties. Watch it. Watch that elbow there. That was a low blow below the belt. Yes,
That's the
on
best
Twitter.
place for a blow.
Yeah, oh, below. Blow below the belt.
God.
Shut up. Judge Dredd is typing in German. Da. That was
Yeah, he does
that was
that.
the,
You know, I don't know why. Nobody understands. All right, Buster Hyman is frumpy.
Oh, hello, Frumpy. He's a handsome feller, he is. I. Yeah, lives up in Canada, and I speak Canadian. Eh? Sure, you betcha. He's an Einstein. I swear he is. Yeah, you don't believe me. You say nothing like it's not true.
I bet you Rome's is not tuned in. He's rambling on about Freemasons and.
Somebody tell him to shut up. Hold on. Let's get Barman to help. Let's just do this.
Anyway, do you know the guy? I've been here. You familiar with him?
Yeah. Yes, I am. A great fella and has done a lot of work for Liberty Media here in
Yeah, I know
Hal.
he's great
He's
over
over at
there on
Mines.
the Minds.com.
Yeah,
He's big over there.
yeah. Very
Absolutely.
big.
I love the Mind site actually. It's cool.
Yeah. I've not been there or Freedom's Network for quite a while here with the crappy computer and besides being off grid or semi a high tech hobo
You should start
that I
yourself
am.
one of those fundraiser things. What do they call those? Where you have people
Oh,
send you money?
oh, I thought you said a fundraiser, and I was like, woohoo!
No,
I'm
no,
all
no.
about fun. No, no, uh, not for me. Yeah, people get names like Gas Man and stuff like that. That's my friend Jamie. Uh, all the great poots have gotten uh, nicknames from the Twitter sphere. Aw, thank you, Chloe. Nice hug. So, hey, since we're doing so well talking tonight, I'm gonna walk out and grab something light on fire and walk outside with it and talk to you. Okay?
Oh yeah, that'll probably not be work well, but we'll see. GoFundMe.
Okay.
Thank you, Buster. That's what
I
you
ain't
needed.
gonna.
Yeah, that's what you needed.
No,
GoFundMe.
no, sir. I won't do that. I
Go
do what I do.
go
You know, we don't get paid for what we do.
go.
Do we?
Good. No,
We do
no,
it.
no. To get you some good hardware to run your damn show on.
It is what it is.
Not
You
to
get
pay
what you
you, just
get.
to get you hardware to keep the damn show going.
Yeah.
Go
Well, you
fudge
get.
me. Go fudge me account.
Go fudge yourself, buddy. Okay, we're outside and it's windy. No, it's not. Are we in the wind? Let's see how that sounds. You know what I need to do is get a little thing to wrap around my little dealie. right here.
Don't be talking about that on air.
What are you doing, Patsy? Here come Patsy. Come see me. Don't get on the cord, buddy.
Vince
Hello.
here,
Wait a
talking
minute.
about wrapping that rascal.
Yeah, it's a little rat dog, Patsy. Yeah, the coyotes were howling, and out here, a day or so ago, this little feller, he'd kill a coyote. I bet you he would. He'd get stuck in his throat and choke him plumb to death.
Yeah.
So what about the Bundys, Grimner? You act like you'd heard enough. I think some people
I
have.
think I have heard enough.
I'm not.
It's been going on, like 4 years now?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it ain't over.
I know it ain't over, but, and I don't mind the occasional update here and there from time to time, but to me, it wasn't that big a story to begin with.
It really is, and you know why? Because it is. It's if it had turned out any different with other than this dismissal with prejudice, other than a complete acquittal, it's going to affect how people in the future are going to be able to stand for their with the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, and whether they can even be put together. Because Judge Go Gloria Navarro in Las Vegas, she says no, that's brandishing a weapon against a peace officer. And now look, if they've been convicted, how much time they've got. We're losing people. They trick them, right? They send FBI up inside, and so not only they just like hoping something will happen, they facilitate it. Now there's different types of FBI informants. You, my friend, are an FBI informant too, whether you realize it or not.
Everybody
you
is.
Yourself. That's right. And what's the different motivations? We had Mama Bear on here and over with Chuck Ocelli on the Ocelli Effect.
Yeah, I talked to her last week, right here on the air, on your show.
Yeah, in the second hour. And I had to bow out because this internet and the call-in deal and all this and that. And this high-tech hobo just couldn't hang. So thank you for doing that, Grimner. But today I think it's going to be different because we're going to add Mike in by Skype. So we'll be all happy little Skypers.
Yeah, and I'll let you two talk, and I will mute up.
Yeah. Well, you won't be mute tonight.
Yes, I will.
At 10 o'clock you will be? You're not going to be on?
Yeah, there's no Grammy tonight, and there's no Freakers Ball tonight.
That's a first.
It is. I don't know if it's a first, but it's the first this year.
it's the first I'm hearing about it. Where the hell have I been?
I don't know, but that's your. Yeah, Grammy talked about it on her show last night. I talked about it on Freakers last week. I don't know where you've been. You don't listen to us. We listen to your radio show.
I do. I do
we
listen.
Get no love from the Vinny. No love from the Vinny.
Not always to the end. It's so late when you're done, and sometimes I fall out. But I knew Moosey wasn't going to be here tonight, but I thought there'd be balls to the walls for sure. But I did hear Graham say that he's going to be gone for a little while.
I can't even recall the last time I took a Friday night off, so I decided it was time to do that.
Are you gonna play cards or anything with the deck of 51? You are one jack off. You'll never win.
Thanks, Frumpy. Appreciate it.
What's Frumpy say?
What? Frumpy said that I did a nice interview with Mama Bear.
Oh, yeah, you did an excellent job. Very, very. I feel so stupid every time I use words like very and excellent. And it was very, very good. Then I'm making the stupid Trump face. The Trump dump. Step right up. We have so many great and mighty Trump supporters here at RealLibertyMedia.com. Not.
we got one. We got one.
Yeah, but he's a Nazi. Can't take him for.
He does not see.
That's right. He's not see. A Nazi. That's right. He refuses a ponder gander to wonder and wander. He's stuck right where he's at. I was there. Weren't we all? I'm back again.
Yeah,
This
I
dog
thought
is
you
looking
were
at me.
doing the whole Dr. Seuss bit there at the beginning.
Did you like it? I wrote all that stuff.
I
And some of it was paraphrased, plagiarism, sure enough, but I did give credit where credit was due from
As
Vinny
you
the
do.
Pooh
Yeah,
as well.
no, that was interesting.
Really?
No, I, I'd have to
That's
listen.
a that's
I
kind
need to
of a
listen to it again.
backhanded insult, I think.
No, I need to listen to it again because
Oh, yeah, me too.
I was hearing it and but I was doing. I got, I do several things at once here.
Yeah, being
Especially
the jack off that you are.
in the beginning of the show, I got things to set up and tweak and adjust volumes and all kinds of different little stuff going on. And I'm listening to you talking there, and I was like, all right, well, I'll take those green eggs and ham. Uh,
Thank you, Sam. I am.
yeah,
So Doctor Vinny the Pooh.
there you go. He's a poet.
Yeah, a Pooh laureate. So you saw the video, the cow ponies,
Yep.
a whistle, a whisper, and a short kiss so long. Well, they're gone. Sure enough, chewed up by the machine, or will be. They'll be going south down to Juarez, and it's not the kind of Mexican excursion that you and I'd like to be. It ain't a donkey show, but they sure enough gonna slaughter them horses. Too bad. She's so beautiful, that mare, blue eyes, and that was her. That was one of her offspring there, along with her.
Who's that?
And so them ponies, they'll be no more, and that's what happens sometimes. They're going to go over and get ate by Germans or frogs over there in France
I don't
or
believe I
somewhere.
ever saw a blue-eyed pony.
Oh yeah, she's beautiful, or she is probably still, but I'm thinking she don't like life. And she probably knew what was coming because I could see the fear in her eyes and the desperation and the will to be rescued. And it's more than a whip or a whippoorwill. It is pretty make you so sad and lonesome
Can
though.
you do the whippoorwill call? Not bad, not bad.
Yeah. Have you ever heard the whippoorwill? It's lost its hear the train. It's lost its will to live. Did you hear the train in the background, or is
I
it too
did.
far away?
I heard my train a
Yeah,
coming.
it's coming around the bend. I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison. That's what really bothers me. Down, 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 down. What time is it, Grimmer?
It is 1:43.
All right. So
I
about
mean, not
15 minutes. We'll look
1:43.
at my.
It's 11:43 in real time. 1:43 East Coast time.
So now I'm confused. Where am I at?
You're at
I was
12:43.
there.
You're at 12:43.
Is that on the clock or is that a location? Because yeah, I got your 6. That's supposed to be somebody, right? Or doing somebody doing something, and got your behind. The end. Oh, that's
What?
the theme today. Is the end. I got your 6. You never heard that?
That's some kind of military thing or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. There was a lot of those guys out there in Bunkerville in 2014, and a lot of those fellas went up there to Malheur at the Oregon Standoff, they call it. And there were some good guys like Jerry Dilemmas. And to tell you the truth, there was a lot of guys that I really didn't want to get to know. Overbearing, throwing their weight around, and a
You
lot
never
of
went
those
up there,
guys,
right?
those were FBI
You didn't. You
infiltrators.
didn't do anything. You didn't go up to Oregon, right?
No, I didn't make it. It was not in the cards, I guess, but I had hoped to. Logistics and below zero temperatures really stopped me from getting up there. Among one of the reasons, and
They
there were
would have.
some
They would
others.
have probably wind up Lavoying you anyway.
Not me.
Yeah, you never know, man. Those guys were gung ho to kill somebody.
Oh, you mean like who? Which side? The Feds or the Patriots? They call.
The feds.
Oh, I thought you was talking about maybe I'd get what they call that?
I said
What they
you would
call
have
that
got.
when they opt
I said you
they
would have got
opt off?
Lavoid.
Yeah, Lavoid, devoid of life.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was
he's
murdered.
yeah. Now
Uh,
he's now a verb.
uh, the guy that opened fire in the truck and policed the shells. There was a big cover up from the hostage rescue team. They call
Of
themselves.
course.
Uh, yeah. So he's on trial. Got preliminary or pre-trial or whatever that is, mid-July, and then I think the 24th of July. Hello, Randy. There's my friend. He's listening. We're friends from Vegas, and I think that he and I are going to meet up in Southern California in July, and then go up for the trial in Portland and sit in on that. And so then I hope to. Then I think we'll roll on over and check out some Idaho land. And then possibly, I ain't talked to him about this, but possibly we might be able to get over and see John Lamb, and I can tell him to myself, that butthurt poot that I was supposed to meet up with him here in Texas for that Waco deal, and him surviving or interviewing the survivors there. And then something happened, and he didn't call. And then I tried to make a little innuendo and this and that, and let on like there was all these butthurt poots and stuff. And then, the whole time I was wagging my finger, I had that other three pointing back at myself. And I had made statement too, before the accident that he was in. So wonder he even lived through that. Quite amazing, and he's going to make a recovery. But I said, if your brother sins against you, should go to him and him alone and talk to it. So, it's a lesson on myself. And I'm not a teacher, but I hope maybe people might enjoy coming along. And,
I would have to correct you on that. You are a teacher.
Am I? Why?
You're coming on here every week informing and giving people good information about the various things. You're a teacher.
Well, I'm a sharer. I share my journey, my learning experience, and I make a lot of mistakes, and if you can learn from that, then all the better. Yeah. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk back inside real quick as we're talking and grab another candlestick to light, metaphorically, as a memorial of life. Walking to, and I'll be back.
What are you doing?
I walked back in the house real quick. Now I'm walking back out. Richard Cogburn song.
You're a restless character.
I'm a rambler, sure enough.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm a rambling man.
Buster says you're a conduit.
What'd you call me?
A conduit.
No, I'm convinced. Our guest, he was in prison with Cliven Bundy, making him a con Mike. I like Mike. We're gonna meet Mike.
A conduit. You're passing information from point A to point B.
Oh, conduit. Okay, that's a little better. I can't do it. I can too. Can't never could do nothing. Don't you know? I'm American, not American, by God.
All right.
Are you ain't no patriot, are you?
I am no patriot.
No. So yeah.
No. What is it? What I don't even get the whole patriot thing. I know that a lot of people consider themselves patriots, but then what are you trying to support there? You're trying to support a government? Because I mean that's basically what it comes down to, right?
Well, it comes down to the cockerstocracy, and boy, I sure don't support those guys. Yeah, they've been at this for quite a long time, and guess who's getting stuck in the end? More the end.
Same as it ever was.
Yeah, that's right. It's all really too bad too, because so many people that left, right, problem, reaction, solution works every time. It seems to me. I know personally my life's experience in travels of understanding this voyage of exploration, voyage of discovery. I was way down there back when I was 20 something there, and I remember I was at Venice Beach, California. Pretty wild experiences there. This chick was had her on a dog leash and they was going trash can to trash can, digging through there and eating weenies. Yeah. Hey, did you hear about the dyslexic atheist that he didn't believe in dog?
Ta-da, boom.
Good dog. That's like I said earlier. It was good forward and backwards, and yeah, it's the dyslexic atheist that couldn't spell.
Okay.
Rough, rough. That was rough. Ain't no laughing hyenas around here. I'm telling you for sure.
Oh,
What are they saying in chat? Anything?
things I cannot even repeat on the air.
Oh boy.
You know how
So
they are.
what?
Yeah, see, you know how they are. Um,
Yeah.
Chloe likes the fact that you called yourself a sharer.
A sharer?
Sharer.
Yes, I love share. I'm a very big fan. I'm a sharer for sure.
And Hansel thinks you're getting stoned.
I'm not. I'm actually not.
See, but that's Hansel for you. He always thinks we're all a bunch of damn hippies that just sit around smoking weed and we're just terrible people because we're not following the government's rules and we use this evil plant, the devil's lettuce. Yeah.
I did get visited by the weed fairy, and somebody I hadn't seen since I was 16 years old. So says she, well, did you get high? And I said, higher than a hippie, for sure. Which she got a chuckle out of. Amazing life, I tell you what. I'm astounded. Coy Callahan, my friend, back in the days when I was on the run, 1985 to 89. Yeah, it was just over 4 years. Yeah, I lived life on the lam, and
I was slightly mistaken. Frumpy started the rumor that you were getting high, and then Hansel just glommed onto it.
oh well, Frumpy. He looks like a genius, yeah, like an
He's a
Einstein.
sharp
Yeah.
dude.
What time is it? I got to go in the house yet?
53.
All right. Well, we'll stick around here, waiting on Mike and more rabble rousing rambling here with Vinny and Gramner.
Oh, dang, my gun jammed.
Oh crap!
Try again.
Don't check it.
There we
And
go.
yeah,
Oh.
and their hammer fell again too.
Oh, and Vinny fell out of the chat. Yeah.
Well, that's that's that wind stream in there. We got wind stream outside and wind stream inside, and it's blowing. Oh, I got a real nice picture of a windmill. Um, I'll have to share that up to Facebook and then get the ScottNet link thing, whatever it is, where you can capture the picture. So I got quite a bit onto my that thing you put in there, that Notepad 2 or whatever. So I've got most of the the podcast ready to go.
Sweet.
Worked on that all morning, plus all through the week, taking down notes and writing that stuff, and then I had to retype it, and then jumping into chat. I got a little bit of revision from some of the resident chatters there. Thank you, in response to my an anarchist whatever anarchist, the Vinican Republic.
Okay.
So where were we? I was there at the end. Where are you? Where were you? What do you do?
I am wherever I am.
Yeah, I know where you at, buddy. Anybody remember the the spaceship ride there video. Greetings. I see you. And I'm coming to get you. We're going for a spaceship ride. Where's old Goober? He came and visited me and stayed with
I
me
haven't seen
in
Goober
Arizona.
today.
Yeah.
Now, what do you call? You got a different name for Goober. You call him T or something?
Yeah. T is the first letter of his first name, and I call him Hawk. Desert Hawk was his handle before, but I call him Hawk a lot. Hawk, Hawk.
Goober's a funny guy.
Yeah. Funny how? Funny, ha ha.
Funny as in he's got logic that doesn't seem to be logical.
The unlogical logicalist. Logist.
Yeah.
It's the logist I ever saw. Yeah, I'm sorry, I mispronounced saw. In Boston. I saw that. What'd you saw? You got a sore? Yeah. It's my butt hurt pooted sore.
I talked to Goober. I talked to Gooberzilla one night on the Freakers Ball there, and I just there was nothing he was saying was making any sense to me at all. Of course, it doesn't mean that it didn't make sense, or it didn't make sense at least to him, but it made no sense to me.
Yeah, that's that ponder gander business right there. Perspective. You don't see what you other people see, or you don't see them for who they are, but who you see they are. All right, welcome back to my broadcast studio. I'm gonna have a drink. I got it ready to drink. And here, let's see if I can get back to the chat. Whoops, turned the wrong thing on. I hit the switch and it.
So this is, and I don't know if you want to mention this right now, but this is your last week there in Bumfuck, Texas, and you'll be heading off to Bumfuck, Arkansas.
The hills of Arkansas.
And that's your home base, right?
Yeah.
In Clinton?
My home in a box. 20 miles north of Clinton, up in the hills, just above the Little Red River.
Now,
I'll be there. Go ahead.
When you're there, do you have like computer equipment there?
Well, yes, I do, and my phone's on, and that's a long story and part of the reason that I left. But anyways, so I understand that I'm left with the electric bill, so I go back and pay that. I always had no deposit on my electric, but I suspect now it's going to require that I make a deposit. Which, oh well, and I'm joining the channel again, and I think Mike might be coming along here pretty soon. And I'm back, and not in black.
All right. And do you have any additional plans to visit graveyards or?
Well, not my very own. I hope, at least for some time, anyways.
That of your ancestral family.
Actually, yes, I do have plans to revisit those cemeteries. I've got a lot to add to the Google Maps. Also, the Riverside Ghost Town and the history there that I haven't put. So I've got a lot of work to do. I am going to download this podcast of Bundyville and listen. And Leah Sotilli, I promise a response. I'm back over here on the Twitter and scrolling down, and as we're waiting for Mike. Yeah, here we go. So to Leah Sotilli, said if you're reading Bundyville before you listen to it, I'll add her little thing in there. Yeah, she did make some mistakes. Chapter 2, by a thread, and that's talking about the Constitution hanging by a thread and the White Horse prophecy. Got to get Brand Thornton to call in and talk about the White Horse prophecy. There's a lot to that. Now, if you have not listened to Leah Sotilli and the broadcast at the Oregon Public Broadcasting, I invite you to do so. Get a proper ponder gander for sure. Listen, and I'm going to be responding, and like I said, I'm not going to call her a liar, but there's certainly it contains lies, and certainly misstatement of facts. So I did just finish the audio series, and I'll be listening again after reading the blog. And you can bet I'll have plenty of feedback. And I am glad that she put this out. It is a perfect hit piece, and it does show great bias. And I am and will be continuing to do so, promoting it for a proper pondergander of paid propagandists. This is sure. And it's 1 o'clock. Any word from Mike?
No, am I supposed to contact him, or is he gonna message me, or what?
Well, I thought he'd come along. Why don't you just go over and reach out to him and touch him? Touch him, turn him on. If you can go there to the Skype and see if you can't bring him in.
The hell, how do I get to that thing?
That thingy is covered up. It better be. How the West was run. While you're doing that, I'll scroll on along and get to what I didn't get to, and hopefully I'll add that into the Poopcast. How the West was run, and that comes from the Vinny the Poet, Vreim Pondergander, the paraphrase plagiarist. Wit and wisdom comes from behind a woodshed, whatever it takes. And I was thinking a way to catch your attention to make some spells and create conversation. I was thinking to make some magic for you to love me as much as I do. Don't lie to Pondergander. That's on the Twitter sphere. Ooh, I'm gonna punch him right in the Twitter. Here it is. I lost track. Episode 4. The number of lies thus far. And I said from Leah, but from the podcast that she's got. And her cohorts, paid propagandists. Can't wait to rip this one apart. Pondergander Bundy Strong on the Twitter. That's Mike Stickler. Also, Life in Red States, covering the Bundy Ranch. Hashtag Organizing Bundyville. You hollered at me?
You were trying to add Mike.
Oh, to add Mike. Vundaval.
He said he was ready, and I've got him ringing there.
Hello.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, it was Mike.
Hello.
I hear you.
All right, great.
Good.
All right, I'm gonna mute up. You guys talk.
All right, you got me there, good and clear, Mike.
I do. How are you doing?
Doing great. Good to have you on. Mike Stickler, author of Cliven Bundy, American Terrorist or American Patriot. And I've got his book. I've read and made some highlights, and I probably won't even open it up here. We'll probably talk about it, but in case we do, we're not going to skip to the end. We're talking about comply or die and rules of world domination and how belief belies the truth, and it is a setup for the takedown. The stakeholder and the stalking horse be the lies that lie under and beneath, but not behind the woodshed. Those are some lessons learned. Hal Anthony coming along Sunday for his broadcast behind the woodshed. A lot of lessons there. Too bad that people in Oregon and at the Bundy Ranch were not receptive of some of these lessons, and probably would have saved perhaps a life and lots of times time in prison for and being locked up by some. And that brings us to Mike. He met Cliven Bundy in Pahrump at a federal lockup facility. And so we want to talk about that, Mike. First of all, how are you? And good to talk to you. Good to know you, too.
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day here in the Northern Sierras, and looking forward to just sharing a little bit about the Bundy, really about Cliven Bundy and his life and some of the things I had the privilege of writing about.
Now, you've been on a book tour, and you've been circling the country here for a little while, and I think you're going to end up in Germany and where else? England, France, somewhere on your book tour?
Our book and our distributors already be in London. Germany's coming later, but I just did a driving tour, about 6,000 miles, all the way out to the Patriot Summit in North Carolina, and then coming back. And of course, I've been up through Idaho, Oregon, Washington. It's pretty fun to see just how many people are excited and educated on what happened in Bunkerville in 2014, and then also it's exciting just to see kind of setting the record straight with so many other folks. And so
yeah, there seems to be a bit of a convolution effects, I think, over on this podcast of Bundyville, and we might touch on that just a hair, but hair, yeah, it's a tale of a tortoise and the hare, hide, and hoof, sure enough. But next week we're going to come back together and talk about that for an hour, and I think I have another guest I have to confirm, and we're going to talk about these being a targeted individual in a sense, and I think we put a bullseye on our back. Now, I talked to or made a WordPress, and that was Tay Wiles. She was interviewed by National Public Radio, and she talked about people referring to themselves as media, calling us conspiracy theorists and alt-right websites and this and that. And at the time, I hadn't realized that you have done internet radio as well as Brian Hyde. So I guess I wasn't exclusive to that comment. But you were there at the trial. Before we get there, just clear the record. You were in prison, and that's where you met Cliven Bundy. If I'd have made it further down the Twitter there, I'd have found a couple of questions for you. One of them is, why were you there, and why did you write this book? And there were inferences there, which that's exactly what they are. So we'll just let you answer that question.
Well, I was locked up. The way I enjoy telling the story about my contact with the Bundys is that in 2014, when all of you were down in Bunkerville making a stand against the federal government, I was making my own stand in northern Nevada as the IRS had indicted me and successfully put me in prison. In 2014, I was in the midst of the fight of my life, and by 2015, I surrendered myself to federal prison in California, and I heard about and I knew about the standoff only because of the news and because I'm a Nevadan, and I'm very familiar with the fight over Nevada, especially with ranchers and farmers, but also recreationalists and whatnot, as the environmentalists push harder and harder on multi-use within the state. So it hit my radar, and I found it interesting, but I really didn't pay much attention to it. Then the next time I really thought of 2016, when I'm sitting in federal prison, and I'm watching television, and I see the takeover at it was now really the Harney County Resource Center, but referred to often as Malyard Refuge. And as I was watching that, the only thing I thought while I was watching the TV coverage, I was wondering, what are they doing there? I thought, because I clearly knew the Bundys were in Southern Nevada. And then finally, when the trial in Oregon was completed and the key players were exonerated and let go, there was a celebration at the prison in California about, somebody beat the federal government. And were
you in Lompoc? I'm sorry.
I said, well, were you in Lompoc or not, buddy? They there was a big celebration, and that was it. I never really expected to meet the Bundys again, or even ever have anything to do with them.
Now, I know a few that were there personally, and I met some later that were up in Oregon there in the Malyard Refuge, and that refuge that came after the Hammonds, Dwight and Stephen, were sentenced to re-sentenced because the judge thought it was too harsh, and the prosecution, the federal prosecution, came back and said no, they got to do the whole 5 years. So we definitely see overreach, and this was for setting a backfire, and I think they're the 130 acres, some odd acres that was burned by the backfire that wasn't on their own property actually did like $100 worth of improvement. So it just goes to show where this overreach goes to. So where were you at in Lompoc at that time?
Yeah, I was in Lompoc Federal Prison there, and so when my sentence came to a conclusion, I was being transferred from California back to Nevada, actually back to Las Vegas for my release, and I was put in the Pahrump facility while being transported, and I was supposed to be there just for a couple of days, and I ended up, quite frankly, I think it was providentially, but I ended up being there for 2 months. And my very first day I was there, said, the white guys, this prison's very racial driven. So the white guys all came up and were talking to me and wanted to know where I was from California and all that kind of stuff. And then one of them said, "Hey, you're from Nevada. Do you know Cliven Bundy?" And I said, "Well, I've heard of him." And I said, well, he's sitting right over there. You should go say hello to him. And took a day or so, and I wandered over there, and I said, "Cliven, I just wanted to let you know that all the men in California have been praying for you and celebrating what was going on, and I hope you make it through all of this." And he said, "Why don't you sit down and tell me about yourself?"
Now, you said in your book, and that was my first impression, the first time I sat down across from Cliven Bundy, he reminded me a whole lot of my grandpa. And you say you talk about that in your book as well.
Yeah, Cliven is not at all what people think and what people have made him out to be, especially that piece that has been going around Bundyville. Cliven is a farmer first and then a rancher. Cliven is a man who has strong convictions, and he's like a million other, well, okay, that's an exaggeration, hundreds of other farmers and ranchers I've met who, quite frankly, just want to be left alone and work the ground and live the lifestyle that they've chosen to live. He's honest. He's square with you. He doesn't like to gossip. He's always kind. He thinks of others before himself quite often. Cliven doesn't speak out of turn towards people or at people and or about people. He readily admits his strengths and his weaknesses. I had what ended up being 2 months of unfettered access to get to know this man. And when I first met him, as I said in the book, I really kind of expected him to be kind of a wackadoo, is how I described him in the book. I expected tinfoil hats to come out very soon, and I was surprised to find out he was something completely other than that.
In your book here on page 32, sadly but inexorably, policies fail when applied to where their makers have never been because they don't know what they don't know. And that says a lot. Now, most people won't know that what type of operation Cliven runs out there and in several sections of land that garners along the borders of Gold Butte that this new designated blank. Anyways, out there north of Vegas, goes along to the Lake Mead up into the Virgin Mountains, along the Virgin River, back up towards Bunkerville, and over up on top of the Mormon Mesa. I spent a lot of time there. I was talking in the first hour. I lived in Moapa Valley, went to school in Overton, lived and worked in Mesquite, met my first love in Glendale, Nevada, not Arizona. And the cows he runs out there, they're a cross. They're F1. That means they're a Brahma bred to Hereford, and then the calves then come out F1. And then there's other types of breeding skills Clancy was telling me about. I hung out up there and while he was working some cattle. And barks at cats on Twitter. I've worked cattle. I don't call myself a cowboy, but some people might have done some cowboying, and back to my whistle and a whisper and short kiss so long, and talking to horses and learning the language, and you can't do that without having a good look. So Cliven raises cattle, and they roam. They said that they're feral. Well, to have cattle that roam in the desert, they have to have and possess certain traits and be able to travel distances. And Cliven has a lot of water structure going there. These water rights. Was it Don Quixote? Cervantes Mount there on Twitter. He wants me to say how his heritage gives him claim to these water rights. You wrote in your book, and I saw Cliven had your book and had a lot of posty notes in there and some notes and highlights. And you made a couple of mistakes, but that doesn't make you a liar as far as the number of water tanks and springs and stuff like that. But they want to see the title or deed to the water rights and the grazing rights. Cliven and Ryan have both told me they're on in court records. And I called Ryan the other day, and he's busy, of course, campaigning for governor. He hadn't got back to me asking where I could find those. But I'd like to challenge you Patties to tell me where this study and the Center for Biological Diversity and Cure on Suckling proved to me that the cattle on the land is harming the tortoise, because my observation says they're benefited. And like I said, I spent time out there, and I've worked cattle and been in, all over that part of the country on horseback and three-wheeler back in the day, and the back roads. I know places that is not just, for common knowledge. So tell us about these cattle and the cattle because he asked you, after you guys got to talking there in prison, and he asked you for some advice. You went to, you've taken some college and university or whatnot, and animal husbandry and so forth. So tell us about these cows out here on the land.
Well, what people need to understand about Cliven's breeding operation there, and what just the common folks don't understand is, they would think to themselves, and even the Bureau of Land Management alluded to this during the trial, is that he could leave his cows out on the range for 3 months and then bring them back in, and he could actually go and sell them and then go buy more cattle when it was time to put them back out on the range for 3 months and then bring another set of cows out there. That just plain isn't going to work. Cliven has spent generations of breeding cattle that are not only able to, but thrive in a very unique environment in the Mesquite, well, really in the Mojave Desert. And they first need to be long-legged and travel far. They need to have a Brahma cross so that they can live on the kind of forage, because they don't graze out there. They live on forage. And they also have to be able to have enough skin surface to be able to deal with the extreme heats and the low amount of water. In other words, kind of like a camel, they need to be able to store water in their body and be able to use it as they need to. And Cliven very uniquely, and actually he's quite genius about it, as he has bred his cows out there and worked very hard. I know cattle, I know livestock, and I've been out there too. And despite all these crazy reports that you hear and the accusations the prosecutors had put out about him, neglecting his animals and whatnot, it's a completely opposite to that. Cliven's actually very ingenious about what he does, and he's very smart. When I went out to his ranch, I said, the very first thing I said, you're raising cattle on this? Because everything I understand about raising cows, that would be nearly impossible to do out there. But then after spending time with him, I came to realize he has a very unique way of doing it, and a very ingenious way of doing it. So you're right. He crosses at Brahma bulls against Hereford cows. Typically, he gets an F1 cross. It's a tiger stripe looking calf. Then he breeds those back to another, usually black Herefords, and trying to continue a type of cow that would survive and live in that environment. I also agree with you. If you go there, he has so few cows on so much range that he's not making any impact on that range out there. I don't care what the environmentalists say. He's not making any range. You can drive for miles and hours before you see 2 or 3 of Cliven's cows. And then you drive for hours and miles again, and you find 2 or 3 of Cliven's cows. And then you drive for hours again. There's just so much land out there that has been utilized, by the way, by both sheep and cattle for centuries. In fact, it's actually getting to a place where it's becoming a fire hazard. Ranchers say you're growing either feed or fuel. Either you're
exactly. You can look at for hundreds and hundreds of square miles. You've got the same vegetation, and then at different elevations that changes. Now, throughout a big part of that, you've got burro brush. It's a type of sage, and other types of browse that this cattle convert into food. That is otherwise fuel, as you say. But if a match goes off, all that stuff could just burn across there. There's a lot of there's a TED talk about putting cattle back there in Africa and this desertification and how that stops it, and locking up the carbon and putting it back in the ground. Not only that, the cattle as they browse, they're eating this stuff back. Now, if it doesn't get ate on, pretty soon it outgrows itself and it dies. It starves to death and dries up the same. But when the cows come along and they're eating on this, foraging, they eat it back. Lush new growth comes back and makes it more palatable for other creatures, from the grasshopper up to the bighorn sheep. The water tanks provide water in areas that would otherwise not be available, promoting populations of animals from quail by the hundreds and other animals. So it is a benefit to the land by having cattle on it, for the water and for the improvement and locking the carbons back up and putting it back into the ground. And guess what? The tortoise will eat the poopy. Yes, the patty on the ground. Even those types of patties are good. And I understand there'll be an emergency situation, a survival food. So if you get somewhere like that and you do need to eat, then do eat doo-doo. Is going to be my advice.
Sure.
Can't taste bad.
Well,
I'm threatening
the other thing about the endangered species is that the tortoises being an endangered species, the reason they were put on the endangered species list is not because of their interaction with cattle. They've been put on the endangered species list because people were taking them out of the desert and making pets out of them and taking them to pet stores and selling them and painting little designs on their shells and keeping them. I remember in the 60s when I was 6 years old, in Santa Maria, California, my mom had one in her backyard. She thought it was great because it ate snails. It just is, it's just, not true that that's the impact. The reason that they became endangered species is because through the 60s, 70s, and the early 80s, we were, people were stealing, just like they're doing now with the barrel cactuses, where they pull off the side of the road and just dig up a barrel cactus and take it home for their own yard. That's why they became endangered species. And so it's just, again, another facts don't matter subject that so many people want to throw around to get the attention off of actually what is going on down in the Mojave Desert.
Yeah, they did a study, and then it's like a survey, and they says, well, according to our information and knowledge, there's too many tortoises on this part of the land right here. Had too many of them. And what happened? So they decided they better gather some up. Now, there was some real estate development going on and all this, this stalking horse. They hide the issues behind the stalking horse for these stakeholders and manipulate the situation and manipulate public opinion. So anyways, they decide to gather up, do a turtle gather, and brought them all up, and they started breeding in population, and then they had to euthanize them, and all the while saying poor old Cliven Bundy's cattle is trampling the tortoise. Another part of this focus that cattle are, harming the tortoise on the land. Now, I challenge you, go into your kitchen, get a glass bowl or a plastic bowl even, and stomp on that, jump up and down, see what kind of damage you could do. Now, first of all, a cow's not going to step on a rock, let alone a tortoise, unless, on a rare occasion, accident. But if he does, he's going to skid right off. Is he trampling down the burrows? The burrows are inside, along like bluffs. They generally don't dig down in the ground, but I guess they do too. And a cow's not wanting to step in a hole either. Maybe if they're stampeded, they might trample a tortoise or two. I don't know. But it is, and as you said in your book too, the tortoise two-step. First time I heard that was from Shauna Cox there outside the Las Vegas Federal Courthouse. And I've carried that tune of the Stocking Horse Hustle along these last several months in my vocabulary. So tell us about the tortoise two-step.
Well, what really is behind all of this, and you can understand the motives of the environmental lobby, why they're so adamant about it, and why they to repeat fake news. Quite frankly, it's already been proven in court, not factual, but it doesn't matter. We keep repeating it, and the real motivation behind all of this is that under the Endangered Species Act and under local regulation, in order to take land for commercial purposes in the Mojave Desert, you have to designate land somewhere else in perpetuity for the desert tortoise to live and survive. And so for that to happen, as an example, and I put in the book, talking about Summerlin. Summerlin is an area north of Las Vegas, a beautiful developed community up there, one of the nicer places in and around sprawling Las Vegas. In order to develop that developer needed to, in order to take that land, he needed to designate another area, or the government needed to designate another area for the endangered species, in this case, the tortoise. So they did a land swap. Well, under the Obama administration, our country focused on alternative power sources, specifically wind and solar. And under the leadership of our Senator, Harry Reid, he was diligent at trying to attract as many solar dollars, especially, and wind dollars, but mostly solar dollars, to southern Nevada to build vast solar farms. Now, usually right about this point, a detractor would say, well, that's already been disproven. The Chinese project down by Lake Havasu was 150 miles away from Cliven's ranch and had nothing to do with it. Well, no, that's not true, because under the land swaps, doesn't matter where it is in the desert, you have to be able to designate tortoise habitat in order to take the land for commercial purposes. So they were taking land and pumping millions, even billions of dollars into southern Nevada for the solar farms. And as they were taking that land, the whole reason behind the Gold Butte, now the Gold Butte National Monument, was to designate a place where the tortoises could live forever, and that commercial things could continue to go on and spread out across the desert. That was the reason. Except the problem was President Obama didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it at the time because he had just lost the Senate and the House in what he calls the Democrats called the red tide in the midterm elections, and he didn't have the stomach to go through the legislative process to designate it. So he waited until the last 90 days of his office to make Gold Butte a national monument. And part of that scoops up Cliven's range. So they still had a problem in the delay. In the delay, meaning they still had to, in order for these projects to go forward, and there's at least a half a dozen of them. Some of them are completed now and some of them aren't. Some of them fell through. They focused on Cliven's land. And why not? Here's this old scofflaw who who we already have a civil judgment against, that we can now get his cattle off. And let's not forget, the Center for Biological Diversity was threatening to sue if they didn't force this to happen. They have a track record of doing that, suing. I call it in the book the carrot stick method. If you don't do what we say, we'll sue you. That's the stick. And if you do what we say, we'll give you money in the form of a grant. That's the carrot.
Yeah.
And that's their practice. And that's what's driving it for 2014. That's what was driving this whole thing, and why 2014 had to happen. Actually began in 2012, but why they were forcing it to happen in 2014.
Yeah. And that is from your book, The Tortoise Two-Step, page 142. And you read on through there and you'll find out about the headlines and U.S. Senator Harry Reid and son as they combined for China firm's desert plants. That's from Reuters reporting. And that may have been Ken Ritter doing that story. He has written a lot about that. More fake news supporter. Where's the $1 million bill for fines or fees or whatnot? Don Quixote, produce that for me, okay? The donkey. Also,
well, you know what? That's kind of a pet peeve of mine, and let me just address that myself. Again, part of the fake news, let's just keep beating the drum over the facts that we don't have kind of mentality. Look, I asked Cliven when I was Pahrump, where did the $1 million come from? And he just kind of rolled his eyes and goes, I don't know. I have never received any kind of invoice or bill or statement or demand letter for anything in that neighborhood. And his own attorney said, by my own calculations, at the most he might owe, using the government's figures, $40,000. Well, okay, let's just put that all to rest, because in the courtroom, the prosecution, not the defense, the prosecution presented a bill for $4,000 for grazing fees, $4,000, and then tacked on another $300 and some odd $1,000 for cattle counts, meaning the time between 2011 and 2013, they went out and tried to get an idea of how many cows were actually out on the range, and then they sent that bill to Cliven. In that, by the way, those cattle counts, they discovered that only about 400 of the cows actually had Cliven's earmark or brand on them. The balance, roughly 1,100 cows, the balance to the 1,100, so that's another, 500 and almost 700, 700, sorry, I can't do my math that fast. 700 cows are feral cows running around down in the desert. The Cliven told me again, yeah, they've been out there the whole time. They are probably the leftovers of the ranchers that the government drove off.
Yeah.
And so, and then ironically, over the whole $1 million bill, the federal government, the federal civil judgment gave the government the right to invoice or to charge Cliven $200 a day for trespass cattle, counting all the cattle as his, all 1,100 of them. And then they didn't even do that. Back to the courtroom, they didn't present the $200 a day. They just presented a count for $300,000 and $4,000 in grazing fees. Now, if you weren't in the courtroom, you wouldn't see that. What frustrates me is the reporters were in the courtroom. The media was in the courtroom. They did see that, and they continue to report the $1 million figures, which was erroneous to start with.
I don't have everybody. I've got a pretty long list of everybody that was in there calling themselves media. Where's the truth at? Leah Satelli, she says that Cliven, and this is where I'm going to let her go with the misinformation and not a lie. My understanding, it was $8,000 and Cliven mailed the check in for $6,000, left owing $2,000, but Leah says that he paid $2,000 to Clark County. We all make mistakes, so I'm not going to call you a liar, Leah, but I'm going to say you're definitely wrong and a paid propagandist. Let's go back to page 33 of your book, and you talk about Cliven Bundy when he was a kid. some kind of kid. Now, he told me, before I go there, he did tell me, I asked him, I said, how many cattle? How do you know how many cattle you got? And this is in response to barks at cats. Well, he says to me that the government's pretty generous as they go out and they do a survey or some sort of thing there, whether it be by helicopter or what. So you want to know how many cowboys was working on the ranch and la-di-da, and who goes out, whether they've got helicopters and all that. Well, they work by a horseback and pickup truck, or maybe off a four-wheeler too. That was a whole different life way back when Cliven was a boy, and his daddy bought that ranch and the farm there, the 160 acres. So some kind of kid he was, but he also told me about his son Davy, and how he always wanted to be with his dad, and he'd be up and ready to roll of a morning, and Cliven would take him out there. And I saw on Facebook too that Jamie Bundy, that's Ryan's oldest daughter, is graduating, and Angie tells a story about her being out there amongst some bulls, and it's a hard life out there in the desert, and being a farmer and a rancher. But tell us a little bit about Cliven, as his story relates that he told you back there about 4 years old when his daddy got a new Ford tractor, if I've not put you right on the spot.
Yeah, no, that's right. Cliven grew up as so many other ranchers and farmers have. You know, I come from a farming and ranching family myself. And my uncle, my middle name is Lewis, and my Uncle Louis, died at 17 years old riding on the back of on the hood of a pickup truck with his rifle in hand. They were hunting, and the truck took a bounce, and he fell off, and the gun did not go off, but he hit the ground and he died at 17 years old. And so the way ranching life and people that live in the cities people in the cities can't wrap their heads around it. The fact that you would put a child on a tractor at 4 years old and ask him and begin teaching them how to operate equipment and how to teach them safely to do certain things. And Cliven, you know, he is very proud of his skills as an equipment operator. And you can see that in all of his boys. They're all, and the girls too, the boys are all experienced, very good equipment operators all the way around. And if you're a good equipment operator, you really consider it almost an art. And so Cliven started out as a young man, and he would actually get on these old tractors where the transmission's right down the middle as a boy, and he would, in order to shift them, he would actually jump off the seat, put both feet on the clutch, press down on the clutch. The body, his weight of his body would push the clutch down. He would shift gears, and then he would hop himself back up on the seat, and it would continue going forward. And then his mama asked him one day, well, how do you stop it? And he goes, well, that's easy. I just turn the key off.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of life he grew up, you know, in. And it's not rare. It really isn't. It's not rare in rural living to learn how to operate equipment before you can learn how to just barely after you learn how to walk. And it's not rare to work from sun up to sundown as a child. And it's not rare to go hunting and fishing and do the things you're doing, you know, before middle school. Those are all very common things, even today, let alone when Cliven was coming up in the 50s. It's just the way life was lived. And people don't understand it. They don't want to, people think that their meat comes from Walmart. And they don't, yeah. They actually don't think it all the way through of what life is like. And one of the things I object to so much about not just the way the Bundys are portrayed, but the way the people in the red states are portrayed is that they're just ignorant hicks that don't know anything. When in fact, these men and women have a tendency to be deeply educated. They go to college. They have advanced degrees. Many of them do. In agriculture today, you need to. But more than that, they're just really practical. They know how to fix things and do things that we're not even deal with in urban settings nowadays.
Yeah, realize the eyes have it. Look and see. It's easily done. And we're live right now at Real Liberty Media about the Bundy Ranch and Bundy Strong, Mike Stickler, in his book, Cliven Bundy, American Terrorist or American Patriot. Cliven says, we're cowboys. The buckaroos are up north. And he thinks about himself as a farmer mostly. And he went on to share the story about the bloodlines, and we've talked about that, the heifers and the bloodline on his ranch. And Cliven shared with you some stories, old cowboys he'd ridden with, and building fences, and they cattle drives, and huge brandings, and the like. And how a lot of those stories that were heard could have come from a Louis L'Amour book. Can you regale us with any of the old cowboy tales from Cliven?
No, not really specifically as his. What we were doing was just sitting around talking about, when you have actually ridden horses and cowboyed, you always have stories of wrecks and laughter and silly things that you do and situations you get yourself in. And what we were really doing is just sharing old stories. And he would tell me about how they would be out on these big gathers, and he was a young man, and the rain would start coming down, and they're out in the desert, and so they would lope off to a big rock cropping in the desert and get themselves up under there and wait out these big thunderstorms, of course, avoiding any flash floods and that kind of stuff. And under those rocks, sometimes they'd be stuck there for a day or two as it just would pour down rain. And, those were the kind of unique stories that he would tell that I wasn't used to. I had other types of stories, because I've never done that kind of work in the desert like he has.
Yes. Now, go ahead.
No, that's it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So Cliven did share with you a lot of history, educated you quite a bit, you say, and we talked about. First of all, Cliven says he doesn't believe that we should overthrow our government. Quite the contrary. And I'd go on to surmise that he wants to hold to account these people that sit in seats of decision. And we roll on along to page 51, and we get into grazing his cows and digging wells and all of this that's considered beneficial use. We come along to the Taylor Grazing Act and on through the Constitution, and Cliven had learned in recent years. So go back to this extreme environmentalism, and Leah Satelli talks about that, and also in the podcast of hers. No moo in 92 and cattle free in 93. And it goes on up to where Cliven actually fired the BLM. He says he's not signing any more contracts. You're managing me out of business. And, it's hard enough ranching and farming out here in the arid deserts of the West. We talk about the Taylor Grazing Act, and it came about to curtail the troubles that in the range wars, the battle on the land there, the cattle rattle and the battle. Tell us what you know about the Taylor Grazing Act and how it came about and how it evolved into the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management.
So the Taylor Grazing Act in 1934 was in response to the West being settled more and more in the 1920s and the fights that were going on now across state lines between the farmers and the ranchers, primarily the ranchers, over their right to graze out on the open range. And so the idea of the Taylor Grazing Act was, in essence, they would form local boards of ranchers who would adjudicate disputes between the ranchers, knowing the history and knowing and being the locals and understanding water rights and privileges and all of those things that needed to happen. And then they would make a decision based on who could graze where and who could use waterware, and then that decision of those small boards of ranchers would be entered into either the county or the state record, and that became the rule. And that was based on beneficial use, who was there first, and who had been traditionally grazing on that land. Well, by the time we got into the 70s, from 34 into the 70s, let me back up one step before I get to that, is that also a little later on, the precursor to what we now call the Bureau of Land Management, they had come back and said, well, we would like to charge, we would also not only to adjudicate and deal with this process across state lines, which the ranchers agreed with, because now it really seemed logical that the federal government should be doing it because it was across state lines often. They would also be willing to maintain the range improvements. So whether that's the wells or the seep lines or the fencing. And the ranchers agreed to that because it seemed like a reasonable idea, and they were charged a very small fee to do that. That's where the idea of animal unit months came from, was to charge a small fee to do that. So that's where Cliven's understanding comes from. So in 1976, the federal government went back and did pass through legislation and signed by the president, passed into law, FLPMA, the Federal Land Management Practices Act. And under FLPMA, the land now was transitioned from stewardship, that the government would steward this for the people, to ownership, where the federal government actually owned the land. And those bureaucrats took advantage. Even if you sat in the trial of Cliven Bundy's criminal trial and you listened to the Bureau of Land Management manager, she continually refers back to FLPMA, back to FLPMA, back to FLPMA. That's where the BLM gets their marching orders, is from 1976 legislation, FLPMA, and its interpretation since that time. Well, they ended up claiming they owned the land, and then from claiming they owned the land, they started to manage it in such a way as what the founding fathers actually didn't want to happen came to pass by 1990s. And that was, we're now the landlord, we're the benevolent landlord, meaning the BLM's the benevolent landlord, or the Forest Service is the federal landlord. And you're lucky we're even here to let you use it. And now we're going to start to manage you and tell you how to do it. And again, what the media wants to miss all the time, is that when in 1992, when Cliven was given the new contract, they had already driven off 53 of his neighbors and friends. They had come back to him with a new contract that they were all excited about, that he had been operating off his father's contracts before that. And the new contract said he could use the land, but he had to reduce his herd by 90%, and he could only use them 3 months a year, June, July, and August, which is 117 degrees, and there is no water in the desert during that time.
Yeah.
I mean, they gave him nothing, what they gave him, so no wonder he refused to sign it.
And it was the setup for the takedown, leading us to the lead up. And that's when Sheriff Gillespie tries to talk some sense into Dan Love. And from your book, page 184, in the weeks preceding the roundup, however, the Clark County Sheriff had attempted to divert the imminent confrontation that BLM's preparation actions would precipitate. And then on July the 2nd of 2014, just 6 weeks after the protest, Sheriff Douglas C. Gillespie, he met with the editorial board of the Las Vegas Sun newspaper to discuss his efforts and the BLM's action against Cliven and his family. On down page 185, this is what normally happens, Gillespie says, paraphrasing the BLM's conversation with him before the roundup began in April. The local sheriff backs out We know what we're doing. And that leads up to April 11th when I arrived in Riverside there for the standoff by the feds in Bunkerville under the Toko Wash. There's another bit of information wrong from Maxine Bernstein from the Oregonian, but she does get best improved from mainstream media in her reporting. I think that came after a confrontation up in Oregon from Kelly Stewart jumping in the middle of her patty. And the tweets changed. Well, the stories changed. Anyways, so let's talk about Doug Gillespie. I know that when I was up on stage and becoming Forrest Gump famous, he was telling how, well, on the way out, I was told the cattle are being released. And I know from the day before, and as to what my witness statement would have been in part, that they were standing down, the feds, the federal agents, the Forest Service, the BLM, and the SWAT teams, and the hostage rescue team, some 200 some odd agents. I counted 180 cars leaving their compound where Dan loves us to shelter in place the day before, as they exited and headed up the northern direction on Interstate 15. So tell us more about Doug Gillespie.
Well, I think it's interesting that the BLM approached Doug Gillespie in 2012 originally and said, we need your help in enforcing the civil judgment that we have against Cliven Bundy. See, why they did that, why the BLM did that is because under FLTMA, they have to use the local sheriff to do law enforcement. They have to. That's the regulation. So they approached him to ask for that support. Well, in essence, Gillespie told him he couldn't help him in 2012 because the judgment had been so old that they needed to go back and get a new judgment from the court. Typically, if you don't execute a judgment from the court, you have about 5 years, and then afterwards, it's no longer a valid judgment. So they had to go back.
Really?
Yeah.
And did they do that?
Yeah, they did. And that's what the delay between 2012 and 2014 had.
Okay, yes.
So they went back to court and they got a new judgment. They basically, in both cases, it's important. People throw this around all the time. Well, he had his day in court. Well, not really. In both cases, the judge ruled against Cliven Bundy and in a summary judgment, meaning just from the paperwork, Cliven never got to present his side of it. Cliven never got to present witnesses or evidence or any kind of argument. It just was ruled upon because he got out lawyered by the government lawyers. That's just the facts. Cliven didn't have a lot of money, and so Cliven was trying to defend himself as his own attorney. And that's really very hard to do in a federal courthouse with gobs and gobs of federal attorneys who do nothing but do this all day long. And so he just got outmaneuvered on the first civil case and the second civil case. Both times, summary judgment.
That's what they do,
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
So now they come back and basically they refiled in late 2012 or 13. I'm not positive I remember the exact date. But they came back in late 2013. They finally had a new judgment, and they went back to the BLM went back to Sheriff Gillespie to see if he would enforce it. And he publicly said, "I would not participate." For one, it was a crazy idea trying to gather cattle in April during the calving season. Secondly, he felt Dan Love lied to him multiple times, and he was arrogant, and he wasn't interested in participating with someone like that. And thirdly, he felt that the way that the BLM wanted to do this was going to cause harm to American citizens, and American citizens' blood is not, no cow, this is his quote, "No cow is worth an American's blood."
Oh, yeah, very good. There were several trials. There were two previous to Cliven Bundy, Ryan Bundy, Ammon Bundy, and Ryan Payne. Ryan Payne was held over in a sense after being them failing to convict him in 2 previous trials in Las Vegas. And then we go back to Oregon, and there was 2 trials up there, which the first one, Ryan Bundy again led the way, and there was no convictions there in Oregon until we come along to the second trial. Some other people took plea deals, and when you're looking at federal prison for the rest of your life, maybe 6 or 8 years doesn't look near as bad as opposed to never getting out. Dan Love was the special agent in charge of the BLM roundup. He eventually got fired. They found out ethic violations. We got the Wooten letter that was leaked, and what a bad man this guy is. Talking about the riding roughshod, he was the man that was doing it. Take the next 5 minutes here, or 4 or so, and finish this out, Mike, and we'll come back next week, and we're gonna tie into this Bundyville podcast by Leah Sotelli, and Cherry Roberts says good luck with that. I got a lot of respect for her. At least she's engaging, and that's what I hope to do. Yeah, that was Frumpy. That was Dirty Dan and his backdoor dealings, and of course we know about the prosecutor of the AUSA, Stephen Myrie, and his "Don't ask, don't tell" policy. Tell us about old Dirty Dan, Mike.
Well, Dan Love, from my research, is it's pretty clear the guy's is deeply full of himself, and the only way I can kind of think of him is boys with toys. He's a guy who is trying to make a name for himself, and see, people don't understand, both in federal law enforcement and in the federal judiciary, the way you get a raise, the way you get a promotion, the way you move on to other positions is by a track record of enforcement and incarceration. I've actually looked at prosecutors as an example, will list, if they're trying to get a job, an elevated position or whatever, they'll list all the people they put in prison. That's what they do. That's their resume. And in federal law enforcement, it's not too much different. They list all the big crimes that they have. Well, if you're a BLM agent and you're in Nevada and Utah, it's pretty hard to find any real, desperados out there. It's pretty hard to find, the MS-13 gang or the giant drug dealers or whatever. And so you kind of have to create them out of whole cloth. He did that in Blanding, Utah against Jay Red and the Red family. He actually ended up getting a promotion, and they created little coins that they were part of Operation Siberius. Dan Love ultimately became the head of Utah and Nevada's law enforcement for the BLM because of the completely erroneous and terrible things that he did to the Red family and to all of the people. I mean,
he bragged.
4 people committed suicide over that.
Absolutely, bragging. Yeah, Dan Love bragged about that.
Right.
It's pretty much a shame. It's not over till the end. We got a couple more minutes here. Let me ask you, what do you see? What's next for Cliven Bundy? Because it's not over. And as I said, when Cliven asked for questions from the media and all the hands went up, and Ken Ritter started trying to ask his question, and I stepped up there at Las Vegas at the Sheriff's Department and said, I believe I'll take this one. And ask him, what's next, Cliven? It's not over. Back to where we started from that hard gather in the spring of 2014. Do we expect to? What do you think? You expect to see something more happen, or you think it'll lay quiet and dormant for a while, or where are we headed?
Well, I visited with Cliven out on his ranch, I don't know, a month ago now. And you know what? Cliven just wants to do what he's always wanted to do, which is farm and ranch. His focus right now is to getting his ranch back into order, getting his crops ready to go. It's calving season. He's trying to deal with the calves. That's why you haven't seen a whole lot. You saw a couple of the first month after he was out, you saw him in the public, but you haven't seen him too much because he just wants to farm and ranch. That's what he's always wanted to do. He has never wanted all this limelight. He just wanted to farm and ranch. What the government's going to do, it's hard to, I don't have a crystal ball, but the government seems to be biding their time until it's politically more favorable to file an appeal. I think that they are waiting to file an appeal and hopefully get the Ninth Circuit to overturn Judge Navarro's dismissal and then try to start it all over again with the hopes that they have a new federal administration that would be more supportive of that effort. That's my guess. That's not Cliven's words. Those are my guess. That's my guess.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a likelihood to me, very probable. Mike, thanks for coming along, and I'd like to invite you back for an hour next week, and let's talk about Bundyville to Bunkerville, Leas Satelli, and we'll go through that, and it'll be my first broadcast back in Arkansas after 16 months of rambling around the country. And thanks again, Mike. Say goodbye, and thanks everybody over at Real Liberty Media for listening along.
Well, thanks, everybody. Make sure you get your copy of the book at clivenbundy.net, and it's all footnoted. You can get Cliven's side of the story.
All righty. Thanks. And if that link's not good, because I tried to get into it last week and it wasn't coming up good, they can also find you at MikeStickler.net. Is that right?
Yep, .net or .com, either one. But it's working fine. I just was looking at it.
Good. All right. Well, I'll include that in the podcast. Thanks again, Mike, and we'll see you next week, brother.
All right. God bless you. Thank you.
Back at you, bro. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, folks.
Mike.
Thanks again.
Vinny.
Thank you, Grimner.
That was fun, guys. Talk to you next week.
All right.
Cool.
Hey, on a side note,